Okay, today we're going to talk about the process of writing a summary, and you need to think of each one of these summaries as an individual assignment because we're going to kind of work on building the 10 summaries over the course of the semester. What you'll do after you have completed your 10 sources list and you've gone through and you've actually found 10 sources that support the thesis statement that you've turned in to tell which side of the issue that you're on, the 10 sources meet the criteria for no more than 5 years old, and you have at least a minimum of 12 sentences that you can highlight within the sources. After you have filled this out, submitted it, and I've given you feedback on it, you're going to go through and you're going to pick the first source on the list. And what you'll do is you're going to complete a summary based upon that particular source. Now, whenever we look at individual sources that you pulled up using the databases or web searches, one of the things that I ask you to do is to go through and actually highlight the sources and to show which sentences you know specifically support the thesis statement that you've listed. After you've gone through and you've highlighted these sources and you found at least 12 sentences as a minimum that will support your thesis statement, the next step that you're going to take is to complete a reading log on this. And in order to find the reading logs, you're going to need to go to Canvas and then click on Handouts. And in Handouts, you're going to see a link here for the reading log. Now, looking at the reading log, it's quite simple. You're going to actually have a place for your name, date, the number of the reading log, and the title of the source. You'll list the thesis statement up at the top, and this will be the thesis that's been approved that you turned in on your source list. And then here it says the main ideas of the article. It's very important that you write down the main ideas of each article that you're summarizing, for the simple fact that these main ideas are going to be the things that you'll use to develop your outline later on. You need to at least have a minimum of one main idea per article. You can have up to 3 or even more if you want to. Whatever the main points are that the author is talking about in relation to your topic, you need to be able to list on this sheet. The next step in the reading log process says to copy down 12 sentences exactly from the article that best support your thesis statement. And of course, these 12 sentences are going to be the things that you highlighted from this original source. You'll copy them down exactly as they're written in the original source on the reading log here. Once you've completed the reading log, you've read and you've annotated the article, you've completed the reading log. In the research packet on page 4, I provided you with some examples of summaries so that you can see what a summary actually looks like. And at the top of it, I've told you this is an example summary when you have an author. On page 5, it says this is an example summary when you do not have an author. I have also provided for you within Canvas, if you go back to the handouts, that I've provided several other example summaries that can kind of fit whatever scenario it is that you're going to have in these articles that you've printed out. 1 author, 2 authors, 3 authors, 4 or more authors, no author, no page numbers, and so forth. So you're more than welcome to print out these examples so that you can see the way that the summaries need to be set up, and you'll be able to know specifically how your summary is supposed to look by following the samples that are listed for you there. Now, if we look back at the one on page 4, you'll see here that it says see page 6 of this research packet to see how to cite the information below. So if you were to go to page 6, you'll see that I've actually set up the citation information for Magnolia, CQ Researcher, Issues and Controversies, SIRS, and then anything that comes from the World Wide Web. In addition to this citation cheat sheet, so to speak, you have the module that is about MLA style, and then you have the section from the textbook that also gives you all the different scenarios for setting up citations for bibliographies using MLA format. It is very important that you look and see how the author's names are set up, how the article titles are set up, the names of the sources. The database is listed at the end of each source that you have that comes from a database. The word web and then the access date is always given at the end. This is going to always be a given on anything that comes from the internet, and you can see that this is on the end of each and every item that's listed on here because all of these things came from the internet. Do not put a URL, simply put web and then the date that you actually found the article. So, so that the person who is reading this will know specifically that this came from a website. As I said, and as the directions in the books give you, the databases are going to be italicized, and then of course the punctuation in the setup here is pretty much consistent throughout if you look at it, but you need to follow the order for whatever type of source it is that you're writing about. All that a summary is simply nothing more than just what its name says. It's a summary. The most important thing that you need to realize and understand about the summary is that it is not an opinion paper. You're not writing about your own personal opinion based upon what it is that you've read. You're simply taking the information and you're condensing it down into a summary to actually say this is what is the most important information from this particular article. Now, on the reading logs, whenever you wrote down the 12 most important sentences, you copied these sentences exactly from the article that supported your thesis statement. You're not going to transfer these sentences in the exact format in the summary, because what you're going to do is you're going to take those original sentences and paraphrase them, meaning that you're going to put them into your own words. The entire summary must be paraphrased. It has to all be in your own words. You will have one direct quote on each summary, and that can come from one of the sentences that's on the reading log. You'll identify the direct quote by simply putting quotation marks around it. This will be the only exact words that you'll have that's on the summary. The rest of it is going to be simply your own words, your summary of what it is that you read. The direct quote needs to be bold-faced, like the example that you see here. And if you look at the example on the next page, you'll see that it's bold-faced also. And if you look at the examples in Canvas, each one of them are bold-faced. Now, looking at the setup of the summary, it's quite simple. In the upper right-hand corner, in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to have your name, the class, my name, the date, and then you'll put which summary it is that you're specifically dealing with on each one of the summaries. Of course, we'll start out with number 1, so the first summary will be number 1, and then you'll go number 2, and so forth. All of this is single-spaced up here at the top, but then you'll notice whenever you get down here that the bibliography information, the citation that you set up, is going to start the double spacing process. And double spacing just simply means that there's one blank line between each line of type. The first line of the source is going to start at the margin. I'm sorry that this keeps doing this. The first line of the source is going to start at the margin, and then any line afterwards is going to be indented. This is what's called hanging indent. So if this were to wrap around to a third line, you would indent this also. If you look at the second example, the one that does not have an author and just simply has an article title, it is indented using hanging indent. Now, once the bibliography is set up and you start the summary, you'll notice, based upon the stuff that you read from the chapters in the module, that you will have to cite where your information comes from. And this one, of course, is cited by author's name, which matches up to here, and also by page number, which matches up to here. When there is no author's name in the sentence, you're going to have to put the author's name at the end, but if the author's name is in the sentence, you're going to just simply put the page number at the end. Every sentence in a summary has to be cited. And I know that probably seems contrary to what you've heard before, but every single sentence is going to have some type of citation. Every sentence will be linked back in some way to this original author. We do that so that at the end, when we start using these sentences and copying and pasting and moving things over in order to create our paper, you're going to need to have every sentence cited so that you won't have to go back and find out where the source information came from. Now, at the top you have your heading, you have your bibliography information, and then you have your summary. Inside the summary you have your direct quote that is bold-faced and in quotation marks, and the rest of the information is all paraphrased. If by chance the author that you are using, for instance this one is Stewart, uses someone else in his writing and says what someone else actually says, or quotes someone else. Notice here that this one says John Johnston claims that many teenagers who become pregnant drop out of school to care for their child, and this one says QTD in Stewart, meaning that Stewart actually quoted John Johnston. So whenever you have somebody else's name in the sentence, always defer back to the author when given an author, and if there is no author, then the article title is going to become the author. You'll notice here that it follows the same exact pattern. It's a place where the author's name is. This one has no page number, and you see the sample in Canvas that shows you no page, author's name, no author, article title, and then the page number. Bold-faced quote. Now, the rule says the summary must be at least 10 sentences long. It cannot be over a page in length because you're summarizing and condensing this information from the reading log. You're taking the original information and you're putting it into your own condensed information. You must have one short quote bold-faced within the summary and in quotation marks because it is a direct quote. No long quotes. You're not going to have an entire summary that's nothing but quotation. You're going to have just one short quote within your summary. Now, as you are summarizing, I want you to be mindful of the fact that there are certain verbs. Here, this one says contends, this one says notes, this one says mentions, this one says claims. You'll notice that there's a variety of verbs that are being used throughout here. None of these sentences are using says or states. So if you go back to page 2 of the page 2 of the research packet, you'll see where I've given you a whole list of verbs to choose from for in-text citation, and then it says here, do not use says or states. I do not want says or states anywhere in a summary because this is easy to default back to, much like using get, put, a lot, and thing. We don't want to use these, we want to avoid those. I've given you a list of verbs to choose from. Please be mindful of what these words actually mean when you use them before you use them. Don't just throw a word in there just because you think it sounds good, but do not use, as it says here, says or states because it will count off. If you would like to see a list of the deductions for the summaries, I have those listed for you on page 3. You'll see here that one of these is lead-ins use says or states -5 for each one of them that I see that's on there. You can go through and you can read each one of these pieces of information to kind of see what gets counted off and what you're going to have to be mindful of as you go through and complete your summaries. If you have any questions about a summary prior to submission, you can email me a copy of the summary and I'll look at it before it's actually uploaded. Once it is uploaded and I grade it, then you won't have an opportunity to change it. So be sure that you understand what you're doing before you actually go through the process. To go back and reiterate, remember we start out with an article. You go through and you highlight any sentences in the article that support your thesis statement. Only the sentences that support your thesis. Once you've done that, you go to the reading log and you complete the information at the top, write down your thesis statement, and then list the main ideas. These are the main points that are being covered in the article. If you're talking about Social Security reform, are you talking about Social Security reform for elderly people, Social Security reform for teenagers, Social Security reform for disabled individuals? And then write down 12 sentences that you highlighted from the article that help support your thesis statement. 12 sentences exactly that you know help support that thesis statement. Once these sentences are copied, you're going to take and develop that into a summary. And as I said, the summary is no opinion. You don't put anything in here that is your opinion. You just simply summarize the information. I've given you 2 examples in the packet, one that shows a summary with one author and one that shows a summary that does not have an author, but there are additional summary examples for you in Canvas by clicking on Handouts. Print each one of these out and look at them carefully as far as the setup goes. Your summaries need to match up the information that you included on your 10 sources list for the sources that you knew had a minimum of 12 sentences that supported your thesis statement. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me and I'll answer them, but do not email me after the submission is due because, as I've stated on the syllabus, anything that's to be submitted electronically has to be submitted on time. In order to submit, you'll basically go down to the area underneath the assignments at the bottom. You'll click on the assignment, and once you click on the assignment, it'll give you an option to submit. This information needs to be saved as a Word document. Do not save this as a rich text document. Do not copy and paste any information in. It needs to be uploaded as a Word document so that I can grade it without having to try to download anything, because if it will not open, I will not be able to grade it.